Okay, right, Tony, part three. Here's one to get your teeth into. At Brook underscore ETH 63863. You asked if, I asked if bookmakers are morally obliged to lay a bet to a punter they know will lose to.
Hmm.
Tony Calvin answered no. Why? So is it morally okay to accept only losing punters, no winners allowed, only losers? That's not morally okay, according to this guy. If that's a position, then you're obviously happy to bookmakers to have a customer base of only losing punters, and then they cannot literally lose. Literally cannot lose.
Well,
Long-winded way of saying something,
well,
but
whether I like it or not, that is the reality. Now, I know some bookmakers do lay media accounts, like myself, but not. I wouldn't class myself as media as such. They do lay them for PR purposes. They do because they're most of them are mates, and there are some firms out there who do lay very small amounts to get the mark. But if I ran a bookmakers, the reality is I wouldn't be doing a lot different to what bookmakers are now. And I know that's not a popular thing to say, and I know it's probably not the right thing to say, but we've been over this for in the last 20, 30 years, and it's not going to change. You can't force bookmakers to lay a bet that they don't want to, that they think is unprofitable. And I'm not a big fan. There are a lot of people go about these minimum kind of like lay bets that they have in Australia and stuff. But some of the stuff you read out in Australia, they get around it very, very easily. And in an ideal world, of course, they should let you take out a bet to a certain amount. Of course, they should, if they see someone doing their absolutes and limit them. And judging from the recent fines been chucking around, they will be doing that a lot more now, because some of these £1 million plus fines, the 7-figure, 8-figure fines, are just absolutely frightening. The affordability angle is a separate area from that. So yeah, in reality, it's unpopular. I can see the way bookmakers do it. We don't like it, but if we're on the other, the shoe was on the other foot. If we were all bookmakers, then we'd probably do the same. A lot of people might kind of like give out the PR about, we're different, we will lay a bet, etc. And I'm not blowing smoke up your own arse. That's what Ben Keefe and you guys do at Star Sports, but you only do so in very set, limited parameters, don't you? I mean, you're far more likely to lay a slightly under the price bet near the off to considerable size, rather than chasing the money in the lead up to the race. And that could be the way that people do it. I mean, if bookmakers went up there and say, look, at us, 10 minutes or so before the off, we will lay anybody to lose X amount at our prices. Now, our prices probably won't be the best out there, but if you're trying to get on in size, then maybe that's the way to play it. So that's probably a roundabout way of saying I can understand his point, but the reality is so different.
okay, right. This is from 8 Poll 38. Any trainers are a firm no from a punting point of view?
Any ones that I think are playing the numbers game, I wouldn't even. I'd have to have a compelling reason to do it. Who numbers trainers? I should have looked at this before. David O'Mara immediately springs to mind. I wrote in a column recently that he's a kind of like, chuck spaghetti at the wall and if it sticks kind of trainer. Very numbers game. I can't work out his MO. Very similar with John Joe O'Neill. Very similar to like David Pipe, maybe Richard Hannon. Basically, numbers-based train. Richard Fahey, I chuck in there as well. Basically trainers I can't work out. Some trainers have a real kind of like William Haggis is. You can probably, a lot of people play that guessing game, isn't it? What's my Melrose horse this year? Stuff, and it's quite obvious what that is this year. But no, trainers that I can't work out, who just run lots of runners, have got about 11 or 12% strike rate. And that's no good to me. No, trainers who train a lot of horses, run a lot of times. Johnson would be another classic example.
Okay. Tip Tap Dan wants to know, do you bet on football?
No.
Right.
only after a few. But my son works on the football side for DraftKings, so I really should probably just ask him. But I don't watch football, and I don't bet on it.
Okay. Keith Mann 111. Can you ask Tony if he thinks there's money in long-term niche markets?
I would say if you specialize and you can get on in those secondary markets, I assume that's what he means by niche. Yeah, then you crack on. But they don't really exist in horse racing, do they? I suppose I do like about the favourite markets, but I wouldn't say that's quite niche, isn't it? So, but I don't know exactly what you're referring to. But if he's saying secondary and markets down the line, spin-offs from those, then yeah, you crack on. But it's not something I really get involved with.
Okay, right. This is at Jim Barber. He's got two questions here. First one is similar to what he talked about at the beginning of this part. If TC agrees that betting companies can limit winning accounts, should they be made to limit losing accounts regardless of affordability checks?
Yes, and I think they increasingly will do because of the reasons I've just spoken about. The fines being bandied around. If they don't nip it in the bud, and people kind of like start crying afterwards doing their money, then the penalties for bookmakers now who are not seen to be doing the right thing and do not do the right thing are sufficient. Again, that's counterproductive. If I'm a consistent loser and I earn £1 million a year and I'm doing 50 grand a year, I can afford to do that. But if that guy turns around and say, well, actually, no, they really should have reined me in a bit, I think the gambling commission will come down on like a ton of bricks. It seems to be that if a punter complains now, they're going to be given the benefit of the doubt, and I'm not sure that's a healthy attitude whatsoever.
Right. Okay. And the second question is the prices for 4 days racing in the UK, are they value for money when an equally good, if not better, product is far cheaper in Ireland? Is it sustainable?
Not sure I know the question. Is he talking about anti-post betting there?
Oh, he's talking about going racing.
Oh, right.
I think he means going racing anyway. 4 days racing, yeah.
I don't care what the BHA say, and I don't care what they pay in football and stuff like that. If you're going racing, you're getting probably on average about maybe 10 to 12, 15 minutes of live action. But I know there's a preamble to the race and stuff like that. The travelling, the entrance fees, the cost once you get in there, you have to factor in how much you're prepared to lose. And it's a full day. I mean, you go football, it's kind of like 2 hours from start to finish, isn't it? If you go racing, you probably get there at 11 o'clock. You might not get there until 6 o'clock. It's a lot of food and drink. It's a lot of expense. I would say going horse racing is not value for money. Yeah, and I would say, and the biggest positive about our sport is it's covered by free channels, and that's not the case with any other sport. So we're lessening the need to go racing, but it's an expensive day out. But when I went to Ireland, it was probably equally as expensive once you got in there, but the entrance fees were a lot more manageable, especially if you go in advance, even the likes of the DRF, etc.
Okay. JN James wants to know, are you playing poacher and gamekeeper with your job at Betfair?
I think maybe yes. However, I think people who know me, and especially people who listen to the racing only better pods and the weighed in pods, I'm not scared to criticize Betfair or Betfair ambassadors when I think they've been given a horse a bad ride, etc. So of course I'm gonna toe the Betfair line to a certain degree, but like I said, I think anybody who knows me or listens to me or reads me on Twitter, if I've got an opinion, I'm going to say it, and I don't care who I upset. And if it means I accept somebody or possibly lose an inch of employment, then that's fine. I've only got myself to answer to. So, but yeah, I think there's an element of truth in that. But I like to think I've got some integrity on the editorial front.
Okay, right. These next two, I'm going to group them together. Census failed 28 and AGT 31. ACG 31. Census Fail says, love the interview. I know you're never one for being bothered by what jockeys you back, but if you got gifted a racehorse, who would ride and train it? And the second question from ACG says, if you won 10 million on the lottery tomorrow and you buy a few jump horses and a few flat horses, who are you sending them to?
Surely the beauty of owning racehorses is that you can go and see them a lot. Epsom's just up the road from me. Now, I wouldn't say they've got the best trainers, but I think the beauty of it is, I mean, if I got in my car I'm always awake at about 5 o'clock anyway. So if I want to go and see my horses work, jump in the car at 5 o'clock, be at Epsom by 25 past, go and see them work, go and speak to the work riders, go and see the jockeys who are going to be riding the racers and trainers. So I would, even though that quite clearly, even though they got Group 1 trainers in Epsom and they're looking to make it a more burgeoning kind of like training centre, I would just say local, whether that be a Jim Boyle or whatever. But like I said, I don't see I love Paul Nichols. His PR is second to none. But, Ditchett's 2.5 hours in the car, without traffic. So I would go local where I can see the horses, the trainers and the jockeys, and just getting a bond with it. And even if they're not the best, I've just won 10 million on the lottery, so I can spunk it as I want.
Right. Now then, this is at Sowen 4. He says, 1 point on your tips. You stated you tip horses you don't really like, but you do it do it for the price.
Yeah.
Isn't this just arbing, which, as we all know, isn't looked on favourably by the bookmakers? So how have you managed to keep any accounts open?
It's not arbing, is it? I'm just backing a horse that's I think it's considerably overpriced. Now, obviously, I bet and tip. I wouldn't say exclusively, but more often than not, they're double figure prices. So, if I think a horse is 30 to 1 and I think it should be 12 to 1, now I think that horse will get beat. Even if I like its chance, I think that horse is going to get beat once in 13, don't I? So, by the very nature, what I said was true. But I just think he's got a better price than his original price entails. So that's that. I don't think that's arbing at all. I said before the interview, there was a time where if I do get the price, I might lay it back. But you can't lay back in isolation now on the exchange, because you'll get a knock on the door from the affordability police, won't you? So, I can't be laying a horse to lose 4 figures in isolation, because, like I said, you can't really do it these days. You are leaving yourself liable. What was his second part? Sorry.
Second part was, so how have you managed to keep any accounts open?
Probably because of I've got a profile of sorts on Twitter and in the media, and if they can get a steer from when I put a horse up and I back it immediately afterwards, that if they're not watching Twitter at the time or on my Twitter feed, then they'll know, maybe they'll just like cut it immediately from 33s to 20s. And I know one firm in particular does that. And they're quite happy to take any trade at 20s when they originally make it 33s. So, I think if a lot of people in the media should be honest with themselves, they're only getting on a winning account, if they are indeed winning accounts, because of their position in the spotlight.
Right, we've got some quite juicy ones to come up in part 4, but I'll finish with this one.
Yep.
Peter Coling, 13. Tony, when are you going to paint your fence, and what colour? I suggest charcoal grey, very chic.
I do like I've got some. Well, like most people, I love the smell of petrol and diesel, and I do like the smell of creosote. So I might just go the traditional brown and stuff like that. But as I've said loads of times, if I've got no interest in doing something, I just don't do it. I mean, I like cars or anything like that. Music as well. Music. I don't know how you do it. Listening to music is just a waste of time, isn't it?
I will agree to disagree there.